Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of DubCast. This week we have a special guest on. We have Jack from BettorSpread. Better spelled Bettor spread. Jack, how's it going, brother?
It's going great, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. We're fired up to have you. I would love to start by diving into your background a little bit and just touching upon kind of how BettorSpread came to be and what really got you onto gambling Twitter and eventually Dub Club.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the idea started around 4 or 5 years ago. One of my good friends from high school, he was a stats major at Harvard, and he was telling me about one of these class projects he was working on, and he was making this NBA model for essentially picking what team's spread to pick for every night. And I was incredibly interested in it. I had already been sports betting for a couple of years to that point, and kind of through the conversation of it, it was kind of like this light bulb went off in my head moment about interest in bridging this gap between sports betting, model-based sports betting, and potentially an alternative investment form, and seeing if this could be a way for really passive income. I'd always been very interested in the investment world, especially alternative investments, and when we kind of had this conversation, I thought this could be a really kind of new potential as that market was blowing up, as there was a lot of interest in it. I thought this could be a great way for young people to really expand their income and see if we could provide that. So we started then. We started working on it, and it bit by bit, we were still in school, but we continued to progress, and now this is our first year being active. We have our first model, and we're off to a pretty decent start, but we're excited to see what the future holds.
Yeah, more than a decent start. I've seen a lot of clean sweeps from you on your Twitter feed, so congratulations to you on your success. And one takeaway that I had from that's super interesting is model-based betting. And so we have had dozens of guests on and only a handful of model-based handicappers. So can you expand on that a little bit for listeners at home that may not be fully aware what model-based sports handicapping is?
Yeah, absolutely. So we created a model, a statistical model, essentially, and you input a lot of data into it, and essentially we try and optimize what variables are most important, how many games take into account when it's making a prediction. So, for example, I think tonight the Nets play the Trailblazers. How many games do you want to take into account from the Nets and Trailblazers to predict this game? Mm-hmm. Is it just the last one? Is it a combination? A lot of those kind of things, testing out how you want to predict it. I think the reason why we were focused and interested in model-based is that a human can't beat a really good computer. Even a decent computer, it's not going to beat it, realistically.
Yeah.
I've been sports betting for a while, but the day-to-day grind of trying to find trends or looking at the data is great and enjoyable. I still do it, but it's hard, and it's hard to kind of control that human bias of understanding how much you like this bet. Our real focus is trying to capitalize on higher bet plays. Our whole thing is focused on ROI. So, we have a pretty aggressive betting strategy, but it's kind of one of those things where it's ultimately the model-based sports betting is an approach to see if rather than trying to pick a game by hand, you just ride this model out. And so, our backtest numbers were phenomenal. They look really good. Backtesting only means so much, but this is our first year active with it, and so really just excited to see how it does.
Yeah, 5-0 sweep last night. You guys are rolling. Question for you. Obviously, Vegas has models as well, and that's part of what makes them so sharp. You've been on an absolute roll lately. What happens when Vegas starts tweaking their models? How often do you tweak your models? Obviously, like I said, you're rolling right now, but how many times a week or month do you go in and make little adjustments here and there on what variables you're putting into the model?
Right, that's a great question. I'd say right now we've been tweaking it a pretty good amount, switching between a couple different models that kind of have different weights of importance with the variables. So it's kind of one of those things where, especially in the beginning, it's always going to be an ongoing process of tweaking it and trying to fine tune it. Ideally down the road, it's kind of something that's more concrete and solidified. But ultimately, as more data comes available and stats get better, we're always going to be improving it and wanting to test new things. So I would say it's going to definitely probably go on forever, as long as we can, really, be tweaking it and adjusting it. But so far, through the first, I'd say, what has it been, like about month of the season, we tweaked it a couple times. I'd say about like 4 or 5 times, but nothing in respects to our betting strategy. We're still betting very aggressively, but just little minor things here and there.
Yeah, interesting. Another question for you is, I've seen primarily your bet slips have been focused around NBA plays. Have you built models for other sports? And on top of that, have you found that NBA is the easiest sport to predict model-wise, or are all sports relatively even?
I would say that we've only tried NBA right now because there's only 2 of us, and I'm not the coder. My roommate and co-founder and good friend Zach is the coder, and he's in school, and I've got my day job, so we've only have so much time for it. But down the line, we definitely want to venture into other sports. I think, especially hockey. Hockey is one of the kind of least sharp sports because of the kind of reluctancy of interest there. Like football and basketball are extremely sharp. That's because of how much action sportsbooks take on those sports, that they now spend a lot of time in sharpening those lines. Basketball, we think, was great for us because it is the stats they have available now, we think, are pretty good. Like a harder sport, I think, to model is football, for 2 reasons. One, because there's such a human element of momentum and things like that in football that are hard to quantify. And then the other side of it is that our whole business is we want to be focused on ROI. And because of the small amount of NFL games there are, the reality of how much you could make is pretty limited. So we are more interested in the high volume sports like basketball, hockey, and baseball would be our focus most likely. But ideally down the road, probably next year, the year after, we'd love to have an NFL model because everyone loves football. It's probably the most popular sport, especially in betting, and it's my favorite sport too. So I'd love to have a model, nothing more. But right now, it's just basketball.
Yeah, super interesting. When you're hitting at the rate that you are, you're essentially turning your TV into an ATM. So that's got to be a pretty good feeling for sure.
It's enjoyable. We're enjoying it so far.
Awesome. Changing gears a little bit, you're relatively new to the Dub Club community. Kind of, how'd you hear about Dub Club and what brought you over?
Yeah, I was actually, I'd heard Dub Club, I'd say about 2 years ago, a year or 2 years ago. Just kind of I've always been on the sports betting Twitter world, and I would say I definitely found out the platform. I forget how, but I just came across to it. And then I was actually referred from one of our followers who said that we should join. He said that's where he finds all his handicappers, and he thought we'd be a great addition. And then once he said that, I looked into you guys and went from there. Got some referrals and joined.
Awesome. We're happy to have you. Absolutely fired up and looking forward to see you grow. In terms of when somebody shows interest, and I'm sure you get a ton of DMs just with your success so far, what is your advice to people who are looking to build a model themselves or to become a handicapper themselves? Or on top of that, just to make passive income sports betting in general?
Yeah, I would definitely say you got to understand what your goal is. There's a lot of different ways you can go with modeling. You can try and produce a model that's really good at hitting a lot of plays, really high win percentage, but likely that model is going to have a lot less plays. So if you're in the win percentage business, then you'd probably make a model for that would look for kind of blowout metrics and big cover metrics. And you'd likely have, because lines are so sharp, like people aren't just going to make a model that's better than Vegas off the bat, but you're just trying to find some discrepancies and find an edge. Our whole thing is, we're focused on ROI. So we're in the volume business. We are not risk adverse. We most days we have anywhere from, I'd say, 8 to 20% of our kind of portfolio or bankroll pending on any given night, and that's our strategy to try and maximize ROI. That might be tweaked. Ultimately, this is our first year, so it's our testing year. We might go to a less risk strategy in the summer when we optimize, but it just kind of depends on the results this year. But yeah, I think it centers around just having an understanding of what's your focus, and our focus is ROI.
Yeah, super interesting. And when you find a player, your model essentially tells you what to play. Do your unit sizes vary, or is pretty much everything 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 units? How do you go about that?
Oh yeah, our units vary. So our model will essentially spit out its recommended team to take on the spread, and then its level of confidence essentially, and then we calculate that level of confidence to units. And so, for example, tonight we have a pretty low risk night. We only have there's I think 4 NBA games, or no, sorry, 3, and we actually are taking all 3. We have the Nets plus 2 at like a 1.8 unit value, which is pretty low. Last night we had a 4.5 unit play on the Timberwolves, which hit, a 3 unit play on the Thunder, which hit, and another 3 unit play on the Knicks. No, sorry, it wasn't the Knicks. I'm forgetting the team it was, but those hit. But so tonight's not really a heavy risk night for us, but absolutely, we every day the units will vary from 1 unit, even below that, to as much as 5.
Awesome. This is super insightful and interesting. Like I said, we haven't had many model-based handicappers on, so I myself am learning just as much as anybody in this. Our listeners love the big hits and the bad beats. Are there any big hits or bad beats that come to mind? It sounds like you've been sports betting for a while, so I'm sure you've had some pretty crazy outcomes.
Yeah, I would say the kind of what hits me the most from my biggest hit is I love the futures market. That's probably my favorite way of sports betting, especially with NFL. So it was about 2 years ago. That was like more than 2 years ago. I think right as COVID started. It was around March 15th, March 16th. I remember the date because this was about 2 days before Brady signed with the Bucs. And I live in Tampa, or I'm from Tampa. But I'd always been a New England fan growing up and a Patriots fan. My family's both sides are from Boston. And I just had this hunch that Brady was going to go to the Bucs. I just believed it. I really did. And I was confident they had him because of the NFC, that they do pretty well, and I liked their chance at the Super Bowl. So I put $100 on the Bucs the day before Brady signed at plus 4,000. And next thing you know, Brady signs, and they go on to win it that year. So I felt like a genius. My ego was at an all-time high. It still hasn't dropped down since then. But that was definitely, I think, the best cash I ever had, because that was something I couldn't shut up about and still haven't shut up about.
I don't blame you. What a read by you. Last question. When you're predicting these futures, does the model play a part in it, or are you purely going off kind of gut feel and what you're reading?
Yeah, I wish we had a futures model. We don't, so all this is just me with the futures. But it's just mostly kind of gut feel and how I think that landscape's going to look like in whatever 4 or 5, 6 months from the day I put it in.
Beautiful. Jack, super fun having you on, man. Hope to have you on again soon. And everybody go follow Jack at BettorSpread, BETTOR spread on Twitter. And subscribe to his Dub Club. Link is in the bio. So everybody go check him out. All right, Jack. Thank you, brother.
Thanks for having me, man.